To my sister, Ellie, if you're still out there, this is for you. Don't ever let anyone tell you that fear makes you weak. Fear kept me alive. It sharpened my senses when everything inside me wanted to give up. I held on because I saw your face in that blur of chaos, and that was enough. Some nights I still hear the growl, I see the eyes, like wet glass in the moonlight. I remember the moment I stopped being a tourist and became something else entirely. Something hunted, something that bled. You won't believe how this ends, and I don't blame you. There's no way to prepare for what happened to me in that forgotten patch of forest near Colleton County, South Carolina. A place they said was safe, a place where no one believed a leopard could exist. But I'm living proof that it did, and the way this story ends will break even the hardest soul. The morning was thick with heat, the kind that makes your clothes cling to you like second skin. I'd woken up in my rental cabin just outside the Edisto River, the trees humming with cicadas, the sun bleeding orange through the moss-hung branches. It was supposed to be a day of peace, bird-watching, photos, maybe a kayak ride down the slow-moving water, nothing out of the ordinary. I remember my coffee was too hot, and I sipped it slowly on the porch while the world slowly came alive. There was a serenity in that part of South Carolina that drew me in, not just the quiet, but the solitude. After years working behind screens, I craved silence. I wanted to disappear into the woods for a few days and remember who I was. I even left my phone in the cabin intentionally, just me and the camera strapped across my chest and a map folded in my back pocket. I followed the trail into a lesser-known stretch near the cypress swamp, where trees bend low and roots claw at your boots. It smelled of wet bark and old earth, like time itself had slowed down there. I hadn't seen another human all morning, and I liked it that way. Just birds, buzzing things, and the whisper of the river in the distance. That's when I saw the first sign. Claw marks high up on the trunk of a bald cypress, 4 clean grooves too wide for a raccoon, too deep for a bobcat. I paused, took a photo, told myself it was nothing, maybe a bear, maybe storm damage. But something in me shivered, and I couldn't blame the breeze. As I moved deeper in, the air felt heavier. My footsteps started to echo too loudly. The forest didn't feel still anymore. It felt paused, like it was holding its breath. A smell reached me then, coppery, sour, like old meat or blood baked into fur. I scanned the trees, saw nothing, but my pulse started racing without permission. Then came the sound, a low, drawn-out exhale. Not a growl, but something deeper, primal. My camera felt suddenly useless in my hands. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw them, eyes, yellow, unblinking, fixed on me from a shadowed clump of palmettos. It didn't make sense, not here. There are no leopards in South Carolina. But it was no house cat. It was low to the ground, muscular, with rosettes like smoke across golden fur. For a moment it just stared, as if studying me. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. Neither did it. I tried to back away, soft steps on the loam, but the leaves betrayed me. One crunch, just one, and it exploded forward. And in that heartbeat, the forest erupted. Its leap was a blur, no growl, no warning, just raw velocity. One moment those eyes were locked on me through the brush, and the next it was mid-air, covering the 10 feet between us like it was nothing. It hit my chest with terrifying precision, its full weight driving me to the forest floor. I didn't even have time to scream before my back slammed into a tangle of roots and my lungs emptied. The first thing I felt was heat, then claws. 4 of them raking down from my shoulder into my ribs, opening flesh like it was paper. The pain came instantly, white and electric. I didn't know if I was breathing. All I could hear was the snarl in its throat and the horrible wet sound of my skin tearing. My hands pushed at its chest, but it was like trying to move a car. I didn't see its face so much as feel it. The whiskers brushing against my cheek, the teeth clamping down near my neck, testing. Not a full bite, not yet, but a warning. like it was letting me know I had seconds left. I kicked wildly, my boots thrashing against air and dirt, and one caught it hard in the flank. It reared slightly, enough to loosen its grip, and I managed to twist onto my side. My shoulder was burning, the muscle shredded. I tried to crawl, but it pounced again, this time at my legs. Teeth closed around my thigh, and I screamed. The sound came raw from somewhere deep in my chest, primal, desperate. Leaves flew, my blood sprayed across the ferns. The forest seemed to lean in, watching. It didn't behave like a panicked predator. It was deliberate, efficient. Each movement was measured. It wasn't rabid or frenzied. That made it worse. It was calm, confident. It had done this before. I felt its breath on my face again, smelled the rot of old kills. I punched at its snout, reached for a rock, anything. But my fingers came back slick with blood. I could feel myself weakening, the adrenaline starting to wane, fear turning into cold. My mind flashed to Ellie, her laugh, her voice, and for a moment I truly thought I was dying. That this was the end, right there, under a cathedral of trees, nameless, faceless. Then a noise broke the moment. Not from me, but from the woods. A crack, a human voice, distant, calling. The leopard froze, its ears twitched, another voice, closer. It hesitated. In that breath of hesitation I acted. I slammed my elbow up into its jaw with everything I had left. It wasn't much, but it surprised it. The animal backed off a few steps, not running, just pulling away slowly, as if reconsidering. My blood dripped from its whiskers. Its gaze never left me. It crouched, tense. I thought it might charge again. But then, without warning, it turned, slipped into the undergrowth like smoke, vanishing in seconds. The forest was silent again, unnaturally so. I lay there, gasping, my body ruined. I couldn't move my leg. My shoulder felt detached. Everything pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Boom pain. The canopy above me spun. Time lost meaning. My breath came in ragged pulls. I don't remember how long I stayed there. 10 minutes? An hour? The light had shifted. Blood pooled beneath me, sticky and hot. I pressed my hand to the worst of the wounds, trying to keep it together. Literally. Flies were already coming. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't spare the energy. My mouth was dry. My ears rang. Every time I blinked, I saw those eyes again, watching, judging, waiting. It hadn't killed me, but I didn't feel like I had survived. Eventually, I heard boots, real ones, shouting, male voices. I tried to call out, but it came out as a moan. Someone yelled, "Here, Jesus, she's alive!" Then chaos, hands on me, the hiss of a radio, the bark of instructions. They kept asking what happened. I couldn't say the word at first. "Leopard," I whispered. They looked at each other like I was delirious. "She's in shock," one said. I wasn't. I wish I was. They airlifted me out. I remember the blades of the helicopter against the sky, the glare of the sun on the visor of the medic leaning over me. In the chopper, I finally passed out. When I woke again, I was in a white room, strapped with tubes, IVs, and machines. My body felt like it had been shattered and glued back together. My mouth tasted like metal. I couldn't speak. My sister wasn't there. No one I knew was. Just machines and antiseptic. The sheriff came the next day, asked questions I couldn't answer. "Are you sure it was a leopard? Could it have been a large dog?" I said nothing. I just stared at the ceiling. They sent people to look. They found blood, prints, shredded foliage, but no leopard, no fur, no kill sites. It was like the thing had vanished, taking all its proof with it. I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I felt. But they didn't believe me, or didn't want to. Even after the wounds began to close, the real damage stayed. In my sleep, I heard that low growl, that breath on my neck. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. And always the same question played in my head, over and over. Why did it let me go? I still don't know. Maybe it saw something in me, maybe it didn't care, or maybe it wasn't finished. The first time I saw my body in a mirror, I didn't recognize it. My left shoulder looked like it had been run through a machine, deep, angry scars stitched across in loops. My thigh was a mess of bruised tissue, muscle torn and slowly healing around thick surgical staples. I lifted my gown and just stared. No one prepares you for that. Not the doctors, not the therapists. They treat the body, not what happens to your mind when your own reflection frightens you. I touched the scar along my ribs, trying to feel grateful for surviving, but all I felt was hollow, like the part of me that knew peace had been carved away with the flesh. Pain management was a joke. Morphine dulled the body, but not the memories. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment. The blur of fur, the gleam of eyes, the pressure of jaws tightening around my thigh. It was like my body never stopped bracing for the next strike. The therapists used words like PTSD, but it didn't cover what I was going through. It wasn't just trauma, it was a haunting. I would wake up to phantom claws across my back, the sharp phantom sting of teeth where there were none. My body was in the hospital, but my mind was still crawling through the woods. The police kept checking in, but their tone shifted quickly from concern to something colder. "Are you sure you didn't fall and hit your head? Could it have been a hallucination from dehydration?" It became clear that they didn't believe me. Not really. No one wanted to believe a leopard had attacked a tourist in South Carolina. It didn't fit. It scared them more than it scared me, I think. Because if it was real, that meant it was still out there. I started to wonder if they'd ever seen what it had done to my skin, if they'd really looked. Days bled into weeks. I relearned how to walk, painfully, with a brace on my leg and metal rods pressing against bone. My hand trembled when I tried to lift a cup. Every nerve in my body had become hypersensitive, reacting like it still expected claws. I couldn't sleep. Not truly, just short bursts of restless dozing, always ending in terror. I jumped at every shadow. I panicked when the nurse closed the blinds too suddenly. No one visited me, not even Ellie, not because she didn't care, but because I told her not to come. I didn't want her to see me like that. I didn't want her to see what was left. One night, a ranger came to speak with me. He said they'd found tracks again, near where I'd been attacked. Large, feline, too large for a bobcat, fresh. He looked pale when he told me. Said they were still investigating, but that I might have been right. That sentence played in my head for days. Might have been right. It didn't feel like relief. It felt like a warning. Something out there had left its footprint behind, and it hadn't gone far. I started seeing signs everywhere, in news articles, in random online posts. Unidentified animal sighted near river, unusual livestock deaths in rural county. But there were never photos, just blurry shapes. My hands shook whenever I scrolled. I told myself it was paranoia, that the trauma was playing tricks on me, but deep down, I didn't believe that. I believed it was still watching, waiting, that it hadn't finished whatever it came for. I tried to tell my therapist. She smiled and nodded, jotting notes. But her questions changed. "Do you think maybe the leopard represents something else? Have you considered this might be symbolic?" I wanted to scream. I felt the bite. I had the scars. I knew the weight of that body on top of mine. But every time I talked about it, people looked at me like I was broken, like I was chasing ghosts. Eventually, I stopped talking about it altogether. One night, I woke up in my apartment and the window was open. Just a crack, but it had been locked. I stood there, heart thudding, staring into the night. Nothing but darkness, no footprints, no noise, just the same feeling I had in the forest, that the air had changed, that something was near. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the floor, knife in my lap, shaking. My body was healed, my mind wasn't, not even close. A month later, I returned to the site, not the exact spot that was still cordoned off, but nearby. I needed to see it, to stand in those woods again. I brought a camera, not to take photos, but to face the silence. The trees still leaned the same way. The air still smelled like moss and decay. I stood there for a long time, eyes closed, breathing deep. And then I saw it, a print, one paw perfectly shaped in the mud just off the trail. I didn't touch it. I didn't run. I just looked at it and whispered, "Why?" I never got an answer, but in that moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't prey. I was something else now. Something scarred, yes, but watching too. A part of me would always be in those woods. And just maybe, a part of it would always be with me. I moved out of the city 6 months after the attack. Something about crowds, cars, glass towers, none of it made sense anymore. I needed trees. I needed silence. I found a small cabin near Black Creek, not far from where it happened, and I made it mine. I fixed it up with my own hands, slowly, painfully, while my legs still ached in the mornings. I planted tall grass and let the land stay wild. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch for hours, just listening. Not for danger, but for understanding. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want closure. I just wanted peace. I started volunteering at a wildlife rescue nearby, cleaning cages, feeding owls, rehabilitating foxes. It gave me a strange comfort, touching fur, hearing breath, learning their rhythms. I studied their behaviors obsessively, trying to decode that line between instinct and aggression. I never talked about what happened. I let people think I'd just had an accident. But inside, I knew exactly why I was there. I was trying to get close to the thing that broke me, and somehow learn to live beside it. Over time, my nightmares changed. The leopard still came, but differently. Sometimes it just stood at the edge of the woods, watching. Sometimes it turned and walked away. Other times, I followed it. I stopped waking in terror. I started waking in tears. Something softened. I could breathe again. One day, I painted the animal from memory. Not as a monster, but as something beautiful, powerful. A force I had never understood. I hung it above my door, not as a warning, as a reminder. Then last winter, something happened. A neighbor's dog went missing, then another. Local hunters whispered about shadows, about something bigger than a cougar seen crossing the marshland. Everyone shrugged it off, but I didn't. I knew. I could feel it in my spine, that vibration, that stillness in the woods. I took long walks, left food offerings at the edge of the forest. I wasn't afraid. I was curious. And maybe something more. Maybe I was hoping to see it again. And one evening I did. I was walking the ridge near dusk, wrapped in a wool coat, my breath fogging. I felt it before I saw it, that pressure in the air, that shift in sound. I turned, and there it was, not far. Maybe 20 yards, lean, majestic, golden with the last of the sunlight. We stood frozen in the moment. No threat, no fear, just two creatures who had survived each other. It looked at me with the same eyes. And then it bowed its head just once and disappeared into the trees. I wept. Not from fear, not from relief, but from recognition. That encounter broke something open in me that I'd been holding too tightly. I had spent so long trying to outrun that day, to understand why it spared me, but in that single glance I realized it didn't matter. The meaning wasn't in the sparing. It was in the fact that we both had chosen not to destroy. In some strange, impossible way, it had let me live, and I had let it exist inside me without hate. I went home and wrote everything down, every detail, every scream, every scar. I didn't write it for therapy. I wrote it for truth. For whoever might find it someday and need to believe something impossible happened. Not everything in the wild is meant to be understood. Some things are just meant to be experienced, survived, accepted. That was the beginning of my healing. I started giving talks at the Wildlife Center. Quietly, anonymously, I told people how to respect what they don't understand. I never used the word leopard. I never said attack. I said meeting. I said Encounter. I said, transformation. People listened. Some nodded. Some cried. And some looked at me like I was crazy. I didn't care. I wasn't trying to be believed. I was trying to pass something on. One day, I walked to the edge of the property and buried the boots I had worn that day. The leather was still stained, ripped. I placed them under a pine tree, packed the earth tight and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. It was reverence, a gesture to the forest, to the wild, to the creature that had changed my life forever. I turned and didn't look back. That day, the forest didn't just leave a scar on my body. It carved a truth into my soul.